This is Plant-Based Briefing, 3 often overlooked hazards of animal agriculture, Part 1 by Nelson Huber-Disla at nutritionstudies.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate articles related to plant-based and vegan living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And today's article is longer than that, so it's a 2-parter. I'll read the first part today and tune in tomorrow for the second half. And I'm pleased to have permission from the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies to share their content. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. 3 often overlooked hazards of animal agriculture, Part 1 by Nelson Huber-Disla at nutritionstudies.org. Many people know that animal agriculture is far less environmentally sustainable and that diets containing excessive amounts of animal-based foods compromise our health in numerous ways. Most of our resources at the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies relate to these concerns. You can learn more about food and sustainability or plant-based nutrition linked here. Still, there are other problems associated with animal agriculture that deserve scrutiny. In this article, we'll explore 3 of them: antimicrobial resistance, pathogens, and inhumane working conditions. Number 1, antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, occurs when antimicrobial medicines like antibiotics, antivirals, antifungals, and antiparasitics become ineffective, increasing the risk and severity of diseases caused by microbial species. Such medicines are the cornerstone of modern medicine, so any decrease in their effectiveness has huge repercussions. Researchers estimate that 10 million annual deaths and $100 trillion will be attributable to antimicrobial resistance by 2050. But don't let the year 2050 fool you. This is a problem today, not only in the future. It was reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, that antibiotic-resistant infections occur every 11 seconds in the U.S., and that someone dies from such infections every 15 minutes, rates which outpace previous estimates. According to the World Health Organization, priorities to address AMR in human health include preventing all infections, ensuring universal access to quality diagnosis and appropriate treatment of infections, and research and development for novel vaccines, diagnostics, and medicines. However, the most important thing we can do to control the increase of AMR is to prevent the misuse and overuse of antibiotics. Toward that end, we must focus on the antibiotics used in animal agriculture, which overlap with those used for human medicine. Resistant bacteria are not confined to animals. They can be transmitted to humans through multiple means. In a large-scale systematic review commissioned by the World Health Organization Advisory Group and published in 2017, researchers investigated the results of interventions that reduce antibiotic use in animal agriculture. They found that such interventions help successfully reduce antibiotic-resistant bacteria in both animals and humans, although the number of studies involving human populations is lower. At minimum, they write, the benefit appears to extend to farmers and those in direct contact with food-producing animals. The evidence of benefit for the general human population is less clear, but has potential for broad-reaching effects. Effective interventions to reduce antibiotic resistance include national antibiotic reduction targets, mandatory bans, benchmarks imposed at the farm level, and required testing for resistance susceptibility. These are more common in the European Union, particularly in countries like Denmark and the Netherlands, which have implemented such policies for decades. The U.S., by contrast, has failed to advance a sufficient, consistent national policy. Although individual states and cities have tried to take steps toward preserving the effectiveness of antimicrobials, there is a glaring need for coherent leadership at the federal level. If anything, we seem to be moving in the wrong direction. The total share of medically important antibiotics used in human medicine as opposed to animal agriculture was less than 40% in 2017. By 2020, it was barely over 30%. Why do we use the majority of our antibiotics for animals? Partly because they increase growth rates, but also because they stifle the outbreak of infections. Neither of these is necessary. The second reason would be a complete non-issue if we had not designed a system of animal agriculture that is so horribly susceptible to infections in the first place. Were it not for this system, the need for antibiotics would plummet. Number 2, pathogens. It's no wonder that enormous quantities of antibiotics are needed to sustain industrial animal agriculture. These systems are intensive breeding grounds for pathogens that can kill huge numbers of animals and even spread to humans. About 3/4 of novel infections are zoonotic, meaning transmissible from animals to humans. Although many people associate these infections with contact between humans and wild animals, intensive animal farming is arguably the much more concerning driver of zoonotic diseases. Intensive animal farming, as in concentrated animal feeding operations or CAFOs, forces as many genetically similar animals into as small a space as possible and subjects them to extremely unsanitary and unthinkably stressful conditions. These factors all inhibit the animal's natural immune responses, making them highly susceptible to disease, which can then spread rapidly throughout the flock. The problem is that less intensive animal agriculture is not a realistic alternative. Although free-range animals may be less susceptible to disease, they require a much larger footprint, which results in even more deforestation and loss of natural habitats, and this loss of natural habitats also contributes heavily to zoonotic pathogen spread. Essentially, there's no winning as long as animal food consumption remains high. This paradox has been described as the infectious disease trap of animal agriculture. Both more intensive and less intensive animal agriculture systems promote zoonosis. The only realistic solution, given what we currently know, is to attack the root of the problem by decreasing the demand for meat. Although the exact zoonotic disease risks of particular foods and diets are difficult to quantify, shifts toward plant-rich diets should play a central part in reducing zoonotic disease risk. Add to this the many other benefits that have been more robustly quantified. Plant-based diets are better for the environment, human health, and animal welfare, and it seems a no-brainer. They conclude, national governments should coordinate their support for a wide range of policies and activities that support primary prevention, which can guide and empower decision-makers to escape the zoonotic disease trap of business-as-usual animal agriculture. You just listened to 3 Often Overlooked Hazards of Animal Agriculture, Part 1 by Nelson Huber-Disla at nutritionstudies.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. Please tune in tomorrow for the second half of this article, where you'll hear about the third hazard related to the workers. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.